why is it that Jewish people cannot eat pork or shellfish if they're going to remain kosher, but Christians totally can? If you ask me, it's because of the way that part of the Bible is misinterpreted by Christians. Now, this is my perspective of it, and it's the unpopular one, and I'm not expecting anyone to agree with me on this. But if you look in Acts chapter 10 in the Bible, now keep in mind that 2/3 of the Christian Bible is actually the Old Testament, which is the Jewish Bible. But in that extra third that the Christians have, there is Acts chapter 10. And in that chapter, as I'm talking about, it's going to sound familiar, that Peter had this dream about all the animals being lifted down on the sheet, and suddenly now Peter can kill and eat any of the animals on the sheet, including ones that he wouldn't have been able to before, like pigs. Things that were unclean, that were not kosher. And suddenly, now he can. And then he wakes up, and then the rest of the story is that he ends up preaching the gospel to people who were outside of the Jewish faith, because the first Christians were Jewish. But now he's preaching to outside of that flock. And now people who weren't Jewish could hear the gospel and be saved. That's Acts chapter 10. However, people have read that, they missed the whole point of the story, and that is, that was the first time where the gospel was preached to a whole crowd of people who ended up believing, and thousands of people believed in Christ after that happened. Whereas before, they weren't preaching to everyone. It started out with people who were Jewish, and then it expanded to that point. That was a big moment in Christian history. But that whole point of that gets lost because people say, oh, well, Peter was a Jewish person and he couldn't eat all those animals, and now he can, so that means Christians can. So Christians can eat even those unclean animals. But the thing is, that's not what it was about. It was about being able to preach to people who were not Jewish. That was what it was about. But people read it to mean, well, but Peter could now eat. It doesn't actually make that connection in the Bible. You don't see where afterwards Peter actually, it's not like the follow-up to that was, and then Peter went out and ate a pig. It doesn't say that. It only focuses back on him preaching the gospel to people who weren't Jewish. That was the whole point of it. So, here's how I want to close this video. I am a Christian who doesn't eat pork or shellfish. I am a kosher abiding Christian. Now, is it for me to say that Christians shouldn't eat pork or shellfish? No, because I'm a libertarian, so I don't care. I don't care how other people live their lives. It doesn't affect me. As long as it's not hurting another person, I don't care what people believe about all of this. But I'm saying, to me, it's very obvious that this has been taken out of context for people to start eating pork or shellfish that were Christian because of this dream that had a symbolic meaning, not an actual physical meaning. So ultimately though, what was the problem with eating pork or shellfish anyway? That's really maybe the question we're at now. Well, not all animals are healthy as one another. I mean, surely it's common knowledge at this point that if, for example, if you eat red meat like beef and sausage, processed meat, red meat, compared to someone who's eating clean fish and maybe chicken, the person who's sticking with these lighter meats is going to overall be healthier and less risk for cancer. I don't think people would disagree with that, but there's enough proof of that exists. In the same way, though, there's also other animals that you can eat that are not good for you either. The bottom feeders in the ecosystem. So like shrimp and lobster that is there to pick up all the stuff that fell to the bottom. Clams, all that stuff. And on land, pigs, they'll eat just about anything. Or we could even say possums or vultures. We could, oh, that's gross, I would never eat a vulture. But it's kind of got the same place though in the ecosystem. So when you're eating these animals that eat everything else as garbage, compared to animals that don't, that's going to have an effect on your health. That is the reason why I'm kosher. And I also recently made a video explaining how I used to have dyshydrotic eczema, which if you want to Google that, please do. There's no cure for it, except I no longer have it because I abide by kosher and I stopped eating the animals that contained a lot of the things I could have. So for example, shellfish have a lot of mercury in them, nickel, things like that, that I was causing my skin to react that way. And even things like tuna would even cause it. So I realized the more I started eating like Jewish people did for all that time, the better situation it had on my actual health. So specifically for me. I will close this video by reminding everyone, do I personally think that Christians should be kosher? My answer, I don't care. I don't care at all what people eat. It doesn't affect my life. Do whatever you want to do. Eat whatever you want to eat. Barbecue possum tails and then just like corn on the cob. Do whatever you want. It doesn't affect me at all in any way. But my interpretation of Acts chapter 10 was never that that was the official okay to start eating whatever you want. It was that it took that symbolism to break through to Peter to think, in the same way I couldn't eat these animals, I couldn't preach the gospel to these people, but now I can. But again, the story doesn't end with him eating pork or shellfish at that point. I believe it's been taken out of context. But at the same time, I have no opinion on whether Christians should eat pork or shellfish. I simply don't care. So, you got more to say about that? A comments section is right here for you.